This is R2D Tech.
And we're back again, guys, with yet another video.
This time we're talking about the iPhone XS, XS Max and XR.
You might not know, but I'm a huge Android fan and I've got a OnePlus 6. So there you go, I'm biased, I'm against iOS and I hate iPhones. That's not to say that these phones aren't a good buy, and we're going to try and help you make a decision in this video as to whether they're actually worth it.
Alright, so the design for the XS hasn't changed at all since last year with the iPhone X, but it's got a few new colours. It comes in gold, space grey and silver. The XS has a 5.8 inch screen, which is exactly the same as last year as well. And it has the same size notch as well. So basically it hasn't changed since last year in terms of design. Unless you like the gold colour. I'm impartial. So, the XS Max. Now, this is a great one. The XS Max is just a bigger version of the XS. It's got a 6.5 inch display, which is it's basically the same size as a Note 9, which I don't know. I prefer the Note 9. It's up to you. I know what I was saying, thank you. No, okay, I think you owe me an apology. Okay, now we got that cleared up. You idiot friend over here. So, in terms of colours, the XS Max, Apple's names are just confusing. XS Max comes in the same colours as the XS. Gold, silver and space grey. It also has the same size notch as the XS and the X from last year. White, black, blue, yellow, coral and red. Product red. Those are the colours of the new XR. They're doing what they did with the iPhone 5C. Once again, they're introducing some colours to brighten up your day. Colours. We'll have those colours on the screen for you if you can't remember what they are. It also has a 5.8 inch LCD display. We'll talk about that later. The bezels all around the side are slightly bigger because we'll also talk about this later, but you can't bend an LCD display around corners. You just can't do it, it's impossible. And the notch is practically the same size as the others. It's slightly bigger than the XS because of those bezels, but there you go. The price. You have to pay if you want an iPhone now because of the price. They call it a budget phone. It's still more than I can afford.
By the way, guys, if we've forgotten to mention which phone we were talking about, that means that it's the same on all three, the XS, the XS Max, and of course the XR. One main difference between the three is if you're a really big 3D Touch fan of Apple, then you'll be disappointed with the XR, which doesn't have this, unfortunately. The battery. This is the dreaded topic when it comes to iPhones. Not because the battery life is necessarily bad, but because of the scandals we've heard of with Apple where they've had to replace people's batteries and a whole mess like that. Hopefully they've changed that, and this time the batteries are going to be good quality and last long. I was though quite disappointed when I found out what the battery sizes were that Apple claimed would last like 25 hours when you're talking on the phone, or 15 hours of video time, and specs like that, which they always use to exaggerate and build their brand. The iPhone XR surprisingly has a bigger battery than the XS, and this might be surprising at first, but then the iPhone XR is slightly larger, so it's understandable. The iPhone XR has a 2942 mAh battery. Now, to put this into perspective, the Samsung Galaxy Note 9 has a 4000 mAh battery, which is over 1000 mAh larger than this one, which is quite disappointing considering the iPhone XR is getting into that high price range of phones like the Note 9. What's even more disappointing is that the iPhone XS has a smaller battery than this. The iPhone XS is the same price as the Galaxy Note 9. And so you'd expect similar specs, similar performance, similar battery, but the battery size is 2,658 milliamp hours on the XS, which is ridiculously low when you hear it. But you know, I don't know what Apple are doing. Their iOS software is probably better at managing battery life than other phones. But even so, such a small battery will probably struggle to get to the end of the day in one charge. You always see Apple users walking around with power banks, but this will probably make that a whole lot worse. Luckily, the iPhone XS Max has a 3,174 milliamp hour battery. Even this is really small. To put this into perspective, the OnePlus 6, a $500 budget phone, has a 3,300 milliamp hour battery, if I'm getting my specs right, which is greater than the XS Max, which is huge, it's like that big. And I don't see what Apple were thinking with this. I mean, surely you would want a really good battery life on such an expensive flagship phone. Now, hopefully, like I said before, their software can make up for this and retain some of the battery life despite having such a small battery. Never mind the battery, which is a bit of a disappointment. Let's move on to something with this phone which Apple actually did pretty well. That is the speaker unit. So you've got, stereo speakers on this phone. You've got sound coming out of the earpiece speaker, which give you front-firing sound. Nowhere near as good as Google's front-firing stereo speakers, which are quite a lot larger, but it does the job. You've got really good down-firing speakers. One thing which may bother some people is the fact that it's asymmetrical on the iPhone XS, because they've included a band on one side, I think for like LTE connections, and therefore they've got like 3 holes on the left speaker grill and 5 on the right. So you should get almost what might sound like surround sound. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, but I'm pretty sure these are tuned by Dolby Atmos, which is something we've seen in lots of phones, like especially with Samsung, in the past. But this is definitely going to give you an improved sound quality and realism in your audio.
And now we will talk about iOS. iOS 12, yes. It hasn't changed much since last year. You can do a few more things. A few little updates with FaceTime and stuff like that. But, it does work really well with these phones and the new A12 Bionic chip. But if you're looking for a phone that works really well, really fast, then last year's iPhone X, in fact, the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus still work really well with iOS 12. So, I don't know, you can save yourself probably £500. Think about it. We also have improved Face Unlock, which is something that I'd have to use if I had an iPhone, but I don't, luckily. But it has gotten 2 times as fast, which is pretty impressive. They've improved the sensors on the front, which is a good thing. Very good, Apple, but still, we have no fingerprint scanner, which is just...
So the internals of this phone are, as you can imagine, similar to last year, with one major upgrade. We've got ourselves an A12 Bionic chip. This is Apple's very own chipset. It's supposedly quite a lot faster than the A11, which was in iPhone X from last year. And I won't believe this until I see the Geekbench scores myself, but most people say it's true. Unfortunately, the iPhone X only has 4 GB of RAM, random access memory, which might limit you when it comes to high quality gaming on your phone, but then the new chipset should kind of make up for this. Nowadays, like the high-end flagships like Samsung Note 9 or even like budget phones, for example the OnePlus 6, have up to 8 gigs of RAM, which is double what the iPhone 10 has, so we probably can't call this phone as revolutionary as Tim Cook thinks it is.
Alright! The cameras! The cameras, okay. So, on the 10R, there's just one camera. It's a 12 megapixel camera, wide angle. And you can do, which is pretty impressive, like the Google, well, it's the same as the Google Pixel 2 XL and 2, in fact. It can do portrait mode with one lens by just using software. Now, obviously portrait mode and in fact all the general camera features won't be as good as on the XS or the XS Max, because the XS and XS Max both have two cameras to do portrait mode. Now on the XS and XS Max there is one 12 megapixel wide angle lens and one 12 megapixel telephoto lens. Now obviously that's a better camera setup than on the 10R, but hey, I'm not one to judge. Obviously all the cameras have optical image stabilization, which is pretty standard on all modern smartphone cameras, but still, it's a nice thing to have. Now speaking of portrait mode on the XS and XS Max, the reason why it's so much better than on the 10R is because you can actually adjust the blur effect in the background after you've taken the picture, which is, well, it's not revolutionary as Apple claims, because you could already do it on all the Samsung phones since the S8. It's just going to be close to other cameras like the Samsung Note 9 and S9 and S9 Plus. Maybe even the P20 Pro.
Guys, I'm gonna have to be honest here. The iPhone XR's display is absolute crap. You might have heard from other YouTubers, like Unbox Therapy in particular, that it's a bit of a disappointment really. It's not the fact that it's an LCD display. You can have some really high quality LCD displays, but you know, they're giving you the same pixel density as the iPhone 4. And you know, that's ridiculous considering they're charging almost $800 for this phone. To be specific, they're only offering 326 pixels per inch on this budget phone, and we know for a fact that it doesn't cost that much to give you a higher resolution screen. In fact, the iPhone X and XS, which is only a couple of $100 more expensive, offer 458 pixels per inch, which is a huge improvement really. You won't be able to watch full 1080p video on the 10R, and in 2018 this is something that you should just be able to do anyway. One other thing is that the XS and XS Max phones both have Samsung's OLED panels, like the 10 from last year. And we know that these are really good quality. They might not be just as good as Samsung's Infinity display, but they're really good. The 10R on the other hand doesn't have the OLED display. Like I said, it has an LCD display, so you might lack some color vibrancy and dynamic range, but you know, we know that this screen on the 10R isn't going to be the best quality, so don't expect to get the bang for your buck.
Now, another feature you get on all three phones is the new HDR mode, which is very impressive. It has very vivid colors. Basically, it will take many photos of different color grades and combine them at the end to produce the most exciting and vivid colors. Now, on all three phones, on the highest settings, you can shoot 4K in 24 frames a second, 30 or 60. Which is, well, it's as good as all the other phones out there right now. Another exciting feature is when you record video, there is stereo sound. Let's say someone's talking from here or here, you'll be able to tell which direction they're speaking from. Alright, so, should you buy this phone? That is the real question, isn't it? Well, there are pros and cons, quite a few cons, but pros are the build quality is really good. It's got the, well, Apple claims the most durable glass on any phone in the world, but it's basically just the same as Gorilla Glass 5 on the back and front, and it's got a stainless steel body on the side. So, but obviously you have to take into account that if you break the glass, it's gonna cost you up to £500 or dollars to replace it. Another thing is all the phones, the XR, the XS and the XS Max, are very expensive. Now the XR is supposed to be a budget phone, but it's £749, which is ridiculously expensive for any phone. Some phones like the OnePlus 6, the Poco phone, are arguably better than the iPhone XR. The XS has a starting price of £999, which is the same as last year with the iPhone X. The iPhone XS Max has a starting price of £1,099. Now that's very expensive, if I say so myself. Should you buy it? Well, there are so many other Android options which are half the price, like the OnePlus 6. And in fact, the Google Pixel 2 and 2 XL are now reduced in price because of the upcoming Google Pixel 3 and 3 XL. You might even want to wait for that. I'm sure it will be a cracker of a phone. I myself would not buy this phone. I'm not a fan of Apple products, and I'm not a fan of iOS, so there you go. That's just my personal opinion. But I'm not gonna hinder your choice. You should make your own choice. I'm not one to say if you should buy this phone or if you have the money, then sure, go and buy it.
It's time for my conclusion. I'm not as lenient as my colleague when it comes to evaluating Apple products. First of all, I think it's ridiculous that it costs almost £500 to replace the glass back if you crack it. And I've seen cases where even with a case on, people have dropped it and the glass has cracked from underneath the case, which just shows how bad the durability is on the back of this phone. And on their camera units, they claim to have a sapphire glass, which they say is extremely durable compared to other products. But then we know from Jerry Rig Everything, if you watch his channel, that it's just a combination of sapphire and some other materials, and it in fact scratches at a level 6 on Jerry Rig's scale, which is the same as Gorilla Glass 5, so nothing special. Their screen as well, which they claim to be the most durable screen ever on the market, is just basically like Gorilla Glass. It's scratched at the same level. So Apple have been telling a lot of lies. They've been over advertising, over marketing, but that's what they do. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, then I understand if you would buy this phone. The iPhone XS and XS Max are decent phones. They get the job done and they compete with other phones, especially with their A12 Bionic chip. But is it worth the money? In my opinion, it's not, because people compare the price tag to the Note 9. But then again, the Note 9 offers features like the S Pen, which comes with lots of on-screen features which you can use. It comes with 8 gigs of RAM, 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. It comes with up to 512 gigs of storage, which is also what the iPhone XS comes with, or XS Max. But then again, Apple make it seem like it's something revolutionary, whereas on Samsung's phones, you've got expandable storage, so you can get up to 1 terabyte overall. In my opinion, therefore, unless you're a really big iOS fan, which I'm not, or a really big Apple fan, that's to say you've got AirPods, you've got a Mac, so forth, then you shouldn't buy this phone. But it's your decision, and I'm not going to change your mind if you are a strong Apple fan. That's it today from us, R2D Tech. I hope you think twice before just buying products. I'm not saying that the iPhone's a bad phone, but just look at the specs, look at what you're getting, and make an informed decision. Don't just be an Apple puppet. But that's it from us. Please like if you like the video, please subscribe, and peace out.
Thank you very much for listening, and if you're a baller, by all means, get this phone.